Hi, my name is Shreyans and this is a series on developing your equity research process. In this video, we are going to talk about efficiency ratios. Now, with efficiency ratios, what we are really trying to understand is how well or how poorly any company is utilizing the limited resources that it has. So let's get started. Now, before we really move on to the specific ratios, let's understand that what we are trying to do here, right? So with profitability ratios, we are trying to understand that how much does a company really earn for every dollar or rupee of sale that it makes. With solvency ratios, we were trying to assess the long-term financial health of the company and its ability to sustain itself, right? With efficiency ratios, we are really trying to understand that how well its operations are run, because let's understand that every company has limited resources, has limited capital, right? And what it tries is to maximize the usage of that capital in order to produce whatever output it does, right? So let's first take a look at the first couple of ratios, which are asset turnover and equity turnover. Now these are measured as revenue versus assets, total assets, or revenue versus equity, right? So what we are really trying to calculate here is how much revenue is produced from whatever worth of assets that we have, right? Or how much revenue is produced from whatever worth of equity we have. So we are trying to understand that how well are we using our assets, right? The base that we have to produce whatever we produce, or how well we are using our equity. And this equity turnover can also tell us a little bit about the leverage, and we can take a look at these two in tandem, right? Then we also have working capital turnover. So working capital represents the investment into the capital for short-term uses, right? And this is also calculated as revenue upon working capital. So we are really trying to understand that how well is the working capital utilized, right? And a very low ratio might indicate that there might be over investment in the working capital. And we'd also look at working capital when we calculate liquidity ratios. So that is something to be done. The next few ratios are actually the receivables turnover, inventory turnover, and payables turnover, right? Now, before we get into this, let's also think about what's really happening here in a very intuitive and basic manner, right? So receivables turnover basically represent that how many cycles of receivables can you complete within a defined period, which is a year. With inventory turnover, we are trying to calculate how many rotations of inventory or how many cycles of converting raw materials into finished goods can you complete in a year. And with payables, that is the same thing, right? That how many cycles of payment are getting completed in a year. Now, why are these cycles important, and what should you be really looking at? So the cycles here are important is because, first of all, we have limited resources, and the more number of cycles we can complete means that we are using those limited resources in a better ability, or we're optimizing or we're maximizing the usage of these resources, right? So receivable turnover is calculated as the sales upon the receivables. Inventory turnover is calculated as the cost of goods sold, or it could be the cost of purchases upon inventory. With payables also, we can have cost of goods sold upon payables, or the cost of materials purchased upon the payables, right? So any company would want to, increase the number of cycles which it has with respect to producing goods, right? So a quick inventory turnover means that you can produce more amount of goods in a specified period because you're using your resources efficiently. And obviously, if a company can produce more, then it means that it can sell more with the limited resources, right? So because resources are a bottleneck or a constraint by themselves, so by these ratios, we can really understand that how well is a company using those resources, how many cycles, so to speak, it can complete with respect to the different measures, because the more number of cycles means better production or more optimized production, which can lead to better sales and hopefully more profitability as well. Right. So now these were the efficiency ratios, and with respect to the receivable turnover, payable turnover, we are also going to look at the related ratios, receivable days, payable days in liquidity ratios, And we try to look at that, okay, we try to understand more actually about what does this really mean. So that is it for this time round. That was more or less it about efficiency ratios. I hope you were able to get a broad idea. One more thing is that a lot of these ratios could be calculated based on closing values or average values. So as I talked about earlier, whichever you use, please stick to the formula consistently so that the figures are comparable. So that is it. I hope you were able to understand this very easily and you can apply this as well. In the next video, we are going to talk about the next category of ratios.